I woke up one morning to find bright red flags stabbed into the soil where my grandfather once taught me to fish. Those markers cut through ground that still held his footprints like someone was erasing him one flag at a time. And when my 75-year-old Grandpa Walter stepped out with his old hunting rifle, the entire neighborhood learned that the HOA's little game had crossed a line they'd regret forever. I'm Dean Mallister, and I thought moving back home after my divorce would be a reset, a chance to regroup, breathe, maybe even find some peace. Instead, I stumbled into a war that had been simmering under my nose. It started with 3 men in orange safety vests crouched near our vegetable garden hammering stakes into the earth like they owned it. They had clipboards, cameras, and that smug way of talking over me as if paperwork made them bulletproof. I called the sheriff because trespassing is trespassing, right? The deputy showed up, glanced at their fake badges, and told me it was an HOA matter. He might as well have said, "Stop making noise." Watching him drive away felt like watching justice choose the other team. By the time I walked down to confront them, they were busy photographing Silver Creek, the stream that runs through our 14 acres. The team leader, a heavy-set guy with a cheap logo on his clipboard, muttered about conducting an environmental assessment for the HOA and shoved a flyer in my hand. The seal looked like it was printed on a home computer, but the arrogance on his face was pure authority cosplay. That's when Walter came out of the house. He didn't say a word at first, just disappeared inside, and I heard the creak of his closet door. When he returned, he was carrying his old army rifle. Not pointing it, not threatening, just holding it like a man checking his fence line. He walked down, steady as stone, and asked one question. "You boys have authorization certificates?" The man stammered, waved his clipboard like a magic wand. Walter followed up calm as ever. "Got a legal warrant." Silence. Birds chirped. Creek flowing. And then, like roaches, when the lights flip on, they scrambled into their truck and drove off. Walter looked back at me and said casually, "That makes 6 times." 6. I'd thought this was new. Turns out it was just my turn in the ring. I couldn't shake the feeling I'd just witnessed an invasion. The next morning, I went to the county land office to figure out what authority the HOA thought they had. That's where my stomach dropped. The clerk pulled up our property file, and there it was, a consent form with my signature authorizing the assessment. Except the signature wasn't mine. It looked like a bad high school forgery. She even squinted at the screen and said, "This looks strange." My hands were still gripping the counter when I heard that voice behind me. Rick Larson, Greenspire Developments rep, all smiles and fake warmth. He said he just happened to be in the building. Sure. He tried to charm me with talk of property values doubling and even offered me a retroactive consent form to clear up confusion. Translation sign this so we can keep stealing from you legally. I walked out with more questions than answers, but one thing was clear. This wasn't an accident. It was a setup. Back home, Walter dropped a bombshell of his own. He brought out journals from my great-great-grandfather, original survey maps from the 60s, and evidence he'd quietly collected for months. Forged documents, altered boundaries. Even photos of men surveilling our house at night. My blood ran cold. This wasn't about watershed protection. This was about erasing our family's claim one forged map at a time. And then Walter said words that cut me open. If we don't fight now, there won't be anything left to fight for. But here's the truth, I wanted to quit. One night, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the fake documents thinking maybe I was the problem. Maybe the neighbors were right. Maybe I was just stirring up trouble in a community already on edge. I'd lost my marriage. My career was shaky, and the last thing I wanted was to become the crazy guy screaming about conspiracies. For a few minutes, I let myself believe I should just sell and move. But then Walter laid a hand on the table steady as always and said, "They're counting on you to doubt yourself." That was it, the flicker that lit the fire again. When I started knocking on doors, the picture got clearer. Mrs. Thompson thought she'd signed a harmless petition about conservation. Mr. Martinez admitted he knew exactly what he was signing because he wanted to triple his land value. Others warned me outright. Accidents happen in these woods. And Darla, the HOA president, the grieving widow everyone trusted. She'd been cutting deals with Greenspire to cover her debts, weaponizing her late husband's reputation to trick neighbors into surrendering their rights. I realized the HOA wasn't protecting the community, it was selling us off piece by piece. So I forced Darla's hand. I demanded an emergency HOA assembly. That night, the community center smelled of burnt coffee and suspicion. Darla tried to brush it off, claiming some rogue board member was responsible. When I pulled out my evidence, the projector fizzled, sabotaged. The room turned against me, whispers spreading like wildfire. And for a second I thought I'd lost. But then Walter's voice cut through the noise. "Who sold the creek rights?" He stepped forward with county documents showing the transfer to Greenspire under forged authorization. That single sentence shifted the entire room. Darla went pale, her polished mask cracking. Days later, they pushed it harder. A new crew arrived, 4 men more gear, and this time a security guard. I was done playing quiet. I set up my phone, hit live, and told the world, if they're sending another patrol to survey my land, everyone's gonna see it. The comments poured in as hundreds of strangers watched. The crew leader waved forged documents in my face, claiming my signature was right there. I zoomed in on the camera. That signature is a forgery. We've already filed fraud complaints. Their confidence faltered, but they kept planting flags anyway. That's when Rick showed up with his hired muscle spouting nonsense about stewardship and community good. The live stream audience shredded him in real time. People recognized his scam from other states. When I stepped closer to block their equipment, the guard moved at me, ready to intimidate. Walter appeared again, rifle in hand, his pace slow, steady, unstoppable. He raised it skyward and fired a single shot. The crack echoed off the creek. The chat on my phone exploded. Walter's voice was calm, but sharp as steel. That was a warning. Next one won't be. The crew froze. Rick yelled about calling the cops. I laughed. "Go ahead. I've been begging them to show up." Sirens wailed and patrol cars rolled in. For once, the cameras weren't just mine. The cops demanded permits. Rick had nothing. The crew had no authority. The guard wasn't even licensed. And then the kicker officers ran Rick's name and found outstanding warrants for fraud in 2 other states. The man who'd been treating us like ignorant country folk was shoved into the back of a cruiser in handcuffs, his fake smile finally gone. That night, the news exploded. Environmental consultant arrested during HOA land dispute was splashed across every channel. Darla was stripped of her title, indicted for fraud. Greenspire's projects were frozen, their assets seized. Our neighbors who doubted us sat in shock, realizing they'd been played by the person they trusted most. And me, I stood on my porch watching the red flags pulled from our soil, knowing the battle was finally over. Sometimes the smallest stand one old man with a rifle on his porch can unravel the biggest lie.